Okay, let's jump right in. Look, there's so much information flying around, it can be hard to keep track, right?
Absolutely. It's like trying to drink from a fire hose sometimes.
So our goal with this deep dive is simple. Cut through that noise. We want to give you the key insights on a really significant development.
And today, we're honing in on India's railways. Specifically, the government just greenlit some major line doubling projects. Big news.
We've got the details straight from the cabinet decision that was June 11th, 2025, plus analysis and expert takes on what it all really means.
Think of this as your essential guide. We'll cover the core facts, the impacts on freight, people, the environment, and, how this fits into the bigger picture for India's infrastructure.
Exactly. So the main thing, June 11th, the Union Cabinet signed off on 2 key railway doubling projects.
A pretty decisive step.
And the scale here is not minor. We're talking a hefty investment, 6,412 crore.
That's what, over 64 billion rupees?
Yeah. To add 318 kilometers of new double-line tracks across Jharkhand, Karnataka, and Andhra Pradesh.
So why this big spend? Well, the primary driver is freight. They're aiming for a massive increase in capacity.
How massive?
An additional 49 million tons per annum, MTPA. That's like adding the capacity to move nearly 50 million extra tons of goods every single year.
Wow. And what kind of goods are we talking about?
Mostly essential stuff. Things like coal, iron ore, steel, cement, fertilizers, petroleum products too. The real workhorses of the economy.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And boosting this kind of freight on rail, that's critical, isn't it?
Totally. It's all about cutting logistics costs, which can be really high. It eases up those bottlenecks you get on single tracks and ultimately helps make Indian exports more competitive.
And this ties into that bigger PM-Gati Shakti plan.
Precisely. It's a perfect example of that integrated infrastructure planning approach, making sure all the pieces fit together.
Okay, so let's get specific. 2 projects, right? First one.
First is Koderma Barkakana. That's a 133-kilometer stretch, mostly in Jharkhand.
And its main role.
It's a major coal corridor, vital for energy. But interestingly, it's also the shortest link between Patna and Ranchi, so it serves both freight and passengers.
Dual purpose.
Yeah. And this project alone is expected to handle an extra 30.4 MTPA of freight, a huge chunk of that total increase.
Okay, and the second project?
That's Ballari Chikjajur. It's a bit longer, 185 kilometers, crossing parts of Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh.
Strategic importance here.
Very high. It connects the Mangalore port directly with big inland industrial areas like around Secunderabad.
Yeah.
So it's moving a wider mix of goods, really emphasizing that port to hinterland connection.
And its freight contribution.
Projected at about 18.9 MTPA, still very significant.
Now, freight is clearly the big focus, but you mentioned other impacts too.
Oh, definitely. Beyond just moving cargo, there's a big human element. Jobs, for instance.
How many?
During the construction phase, they expect to generate 108 lakh human days of direct work. That's 10.8 million workdays. Significant employment.
And for the local communities along these new double lines.
Big connectivity improvements. The sources say it benefits around 1,408 villages, impacting over 28 lakh people, 2.8 million residents directly.
So better access to markets, services.
Exactly. Easier travel, getting goods out, potentially making transport corridors more equitable,
Right.
Real tangible benefits.
And then there's the environment.
Yeah.
How does doubling railway lines help there?
Well, the key is shifting freight off the roads and onto rail. Rail is generally much more fuel efficient for heavy goods.
Right. Less trucking.
Less trucking means less diesel. The projection is saving about 52 crore liters of oil imports per year. That's 520 million liters.
And CO2 emissions.
A massive cut there, too, around 264 crore kilograms annually.
Wow. 264 crore kilograms. That's a hard number to grasp.
It really is. To put it in context, that CO2 saving is like planting 11 crore trees every year.
110 million trees. That's incredible.
It is. Now, obviously, building the lines itself has environmental impacts.
Yeah.
Land use, habitat, waste management, that needs careful handling.
But the government is aware of that.
Yes, the sources stress there's a commitment to environmental safeguards during construction. Balancing act, always.
So, timeline, they're aiming for 3 years to complete these.
That's the goal, yes.
Yeah.
Pretty ambitious for projects of this. Look, these aren't just extra railway tracks. They represent a really fundamental move to boost India's logistics, make a dent in its environmental footprint from transport, and significantly improve connectivity for millions.
And important to remember, these are just pieces of a much larger puzzle, right? Part of that huge national rail modernization plan stretching out to 2031.
Exactly. Foundational elements for what's coming next.
Which leads to a final thought for you, the listener. Considering that massive 2031 vision and how projects like these doubling efforts are laying the groundwork today, how do they potentially enable future technologies? Things like, say, the hydrogen trains India's exploring. And critically, how do we balance that future potential with managing the immediate environmental challenges during construction? Something to ponder as these projects move forward.